What's up? We are back with episode number 277.
Wow.
There you go.
Almost to 300. That's crazy.
So, how's everybody doing?
Doing all right.
Everybody's all quiet and tired and beat from the day.
Yep.
Right on. We got people already chiming in. What's up? Damien Hair Metal.
Isn't he from England?
Damien, are you from UK?
I'm seeing names I don't recognize. But I know. I mean, I see him every week. But
Mr. Pickle.
Sorry,
Mr. Avenger of Blood.
I do know Shannon Drive for sure.
Right on. Well, let's get into it, man. Before we go, we always do our little shout outs and then anything you guys want to show, add, say before we get into the topic. But we'll start with Steve, and then we'll go around and we'll end with John, and then we can get into the POW.
So I'm going to say something controversial to start the night. I went to a concert Sunday night. It's actually my second time seeing this band, and I don't get the Lizzie Hill thing. It's the second time I've seen her. I didn't go to see her. I went to see Volbeat, and she was the opener. She played right before Volbeat. I was actually listening to her song. It's basically country music and pop music with distortion is basically all her band is. I don't know. Maybe you guys get it. Just a little rant. I don't get it. I sat there for 45 minutes just rolling my eyes as everybody went crazy. So
Lizzie Hale, yeah, I've Hailstorm. I've tried. I've listened to all their albums, and they're just like you said, mostly pop records with some distortion. And I'm gonna say half the songs are always ballads, anyhow.
Well, and the ballads, if you listen to the lyrics, they're country songs that have a look. They start off slow, it's country, and then halfway through they add a little distortion and pick it up. You know, that was the formula. So I don't know. That's what I got out of my.
You had me stop down at I went to see Volbeat. But anyway,
I love early Volbeat when they mixed. It was like a mix of rockabilly or psychobilly vocals with heavy metal. And it was completely original. Nobody sounded like that. Their last couple albums, they tried to go more the metal route. I don't like them as much, but
I just can't do the vocals with Volbeat.
Yeah,
I respect the music, but
I like the early vocals. Like I said, they have this kind of rockabilly sound to them, to his voice, and he's kind of got away from that, and he's kind of doing like the devil thing now, the devil worshiper type stuff now, and it's just cheesy. So I liked about half the show. I didn't pay for tickets. I got free tickets, and that's the main reason I went. But
it's the best price ever.
Yeah.
Yep.
Anyway.
Well, I thought Lizzie did a pretty good job singing for Skid Row. She did a couple songs with Skid Row. She did a pretty good job singing for them.
Yeah, she's got a great voice.
I'm not a fan of her band, really, but I thought she did good with singing the Skid Row songs.
Yeah, she's got a great voice, and she's definitely not hard on the eyes.
No, no, definitely not. Anyway, I got I ordered this from the Bandcamp, the new Hyrax album.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I guess Caton takes care of everything because he gave me like all this, like a sticker and like all these little tchotchke things. I thought it was pretty cool. And he gave me all these little, I guess, little flyers.
Yeah, that's Caton, all right. Caton does that.
Yeah, so I thought that was pretty cool. And
right
yeah, so it's cool stuff there. This one I thought was cool.
Caton always does that kind of stuff. Yeah, that's a great lineup.
That's stacked.
Yeah, that was cool. Yeah, so that's what I thought. That's pretty cool. I was like, I wasn't expecting all that.
That show's coming up too, right? That show you just showed with the Dark Angel.
It says North America 2025.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is what 9/5 to 10/16. Yep. Dark Angel. Yep. That's it.
I'm thinking about driving to South Carolina to see that show. South Carolina, I think they're going to South Carolina.
I'm not familiar with Interceptor or Void. Are you guys?
Void, I'm very
familiar with. Void.
Yeah,
love
killer
Void.
thrash band.
Great thrash.
Yeah.
Interceptors from South Carolina, and they're if you like Venom worship, you'll love them.
Right there.
Oh, cool.
Interceptor. You mean this band here?
Yeah.
I knew you would.
They even sort of.
Unfortunately, they're not. Violence isn't going to be at the show that I want to go to.
Right on. Yeah, I think like Hyrax is on every show, and I think I don't know. There's two of the bands are on every show, and then other bands are switching in and out.
Yeah.
But who's next?
Brandon.
Brandon, you got
All right.
anything you want to talk about before we?
Yeah, I picked up a couple of records recently. I've been looking for these for a while. Of course, it's funny because we're doing this episode. Finally picked up Painkiller. Awesome stuff. I've been looking for this for a while. And the second one, it's funny because this is a band I talked about last time I was on, and I've been looking for this fucking album forever. Finally got it, man. And I was spinning this thing all week. So good. Classic Riot. One of the most underrated metal bands of all time. But
agreed, and especially that record. That thing's a scorcher.
Yeah.
I was talking to somebody about Riot, and they were saying that their mascot, Johnny or Mighty T or whatever you call him, is the reason that they didn't go anywhere because it was so bad.
Oh, 100%. I mean, we used to buy records in the 80s based on the album cover, and I used to see that and flip right by it. I didn't get into that until years later.
Yeah.
Yeah, especially for like those first three like album covers. It's like, what the fuck? Back in the day, if I saw it, I might have picked it up just out of curiosity because it was like, it's like, what music could even be on this, But
that's what got me into Molly Hatchet, because it was the most metal album cover I had ever seen in my life, and of course, it wasn't. But
that's how I listened to Meatloaf for the first time.
Same, yeah. I remember I was in a library back when libraries had records, and I put it on. I was like, "What the fuck is this?"
Right.
Yeah.
Right on. Well, I've got a few things I want to show real quick too. First of all, these are shipping. So the new Lizzie Borden, Appointment with Death. When I say new, it's an old album that's finally been released on vinyl. So 2007, 2025. I don't know if I showed this before on here, but there's 3 different colors available. Rob Whitlock. Hi, Rob. Rob Whitlock's watching. I just saw his name come up. Rob Caldwell did the mastering on this, and he did a fantastic job. The thing sounds freaking amazing. But if you buy the silver version of this thing, or the smoke version they call it, it comes with a Lizzie Borden death certificate. Appointment with death certificate.
Everybody needs one of those.
Yes, and you can put in your own name and your time of death and everything. So I thought that was very classy.
It was really cool. It would come with it.
It also comes with a little like a 4-page booklet too, or whatever you call it, insert. So anyhow, so that's one that I wanted to show because I got an advance copy, but they're shipping now, so everybody's getting them. This is one of my favorite albums of the year, and I finally got the vinyl. I've had the CD for a little while, but the vinyl's finally shipping, and this is the new Reign of Glory Slingshot with what's the vocalist's name? Yngwie Malmsteen vocalist. Come on, help me out.
Mark
You guys
Bowles.
know who it is.
We
Thank
do
you,
this
Mark Bowles on vocals.
every single time you show that one of their records.
Yeah, well, he only sang on the new one. He didn't sing on the last one.
Every time you show that, man.
Yeah. Mark Bowles, Nick Layton, Roger Del Martin, and Jeffrey McCormick. These guys have all been in lots of big bands. Fifth Angel, Vengeance, Die Happy, Yngwie Malmsteen, among others. Ted Nugent. And then this one's for Carcass, because I know how much you love this album.
Well, to your point last week, if you're into industrial music, it sounds really killer. I mean, it's pretty cool, but it's more of an Angel, for crying out loud. So, in fact,
it is, but it isn't.
I'm doing an episode on Carcass John's Alter Ego about bands that just completely changed their genre. I started off with Metallica. Of course, we did Trapped Under Ice, and then some piece of crap from Saint Anger. And I mean, I had people sitting in the room with me, and they're just like, they were like reacting like they had just stung by a bee or something when the Metallica came on. And nobody believed me when I played something off of Altars of Madness and then played that. They're just like, that's not the same. I said, well,
Well, you could have done the first 3 Danzigs and then Black Acid Devil when he went industrial. And
man, I could talk for days about Danzig, but I'd rather not waste my time.
Hasn't
anyway,
been as popular since.
Yeah, I mean, it is Morbid Angel
listen to
songs,
Lizzie Hill.
but it's not really Morbid Angel. It's all these industrial bands that went in and took their songs and made remixes of them,
Yeah, they've done that with Metallica, and they've done that with several
Well,
other bands
a lot of
too.
bands have done that.
Dio.
So
Yeah.
I think
Well,
the only band that pulled it off well was Fear Factory when they did demanufacture and then remanufacture, where it was like the electronic techno versions of that. And it actually came out pretty cool, but most bands can't pull it off.
But Fear Factor Fear Factory is just a completely different. They're more like Meshuggah. They could pull that off too because they're mostly tuned electronically rather than manually or whatever.
Yeah.
I agree with everybody who's saying that The Reign of Glory is awesome. It's definitely one of the better melodic metal albums that have come out in a long time. Great guitar playing, great vocals. Anyhow, but yeah, I mean, it's who else do you like? You guys like Circle of Dust because they did a great remix of the first Living Sacrifice and the first couple Believer albums and made them all into thrash/industrial songs, and I liked them.
I mean, there's a close proximity with industrial and thrash, and so I mean, look at Rick Perry and Puncture. Well,
the problem with Fear Factory is their first couple albums were really amazing, and then every album after that is them trying to sound exactly like those first couple albums.
You mean like Rob Zombie? It's like you can buy a new Rob Zombie album and it's just exactly like the last one. Yeah. But anyway, they're
still getting riot comments too. So awesome. Cool. Where are we, John?
All right.
Got anything you want to do before we get into our?
Yep, I have a major shout out. First, I want to shout out Tony Reed from Pentagram and Warm Spring Water and Moss Generator and Stone Axe and whatever else. He just put out about 21 or 2 cover tunes that he did between 2017 and 2024, and he put them on Bandcamp for free. So go download them immediately. They're all stellar. He does everything from the Cars to Devo to Discharge to it's insane. Tony Reed is one of the more talented people I've ever met. And so in lieu of that, time for the pick of the week. That intro's way too long. I'm just kidding. It's not.
It's 5 seconds.
So in lieu of my shout out to Tony Reed, I couldn't decide between these two, but whatever. But everybody needs this in their collection. Moss Generator, Exiles. It's only a few songs. It's leftover songs from the previous record. And then 3 cover tunes. They do Light Up the Sky by Van Halen, Air Dance by Black Sabbath, and Anthem by Rush. And I'm telling you, everybody needs this. And this is not just Tony himself. This is Tony, Scooter, and John O'Garrett, who is an extremely great drummer. And I've been listening to this, too, Spontaneous Combustion. I couldn't pick between the two. So since they're short, they're both kind of EPs. This has got 4 tracks on it. Just go buy them both. I mean, like I said, Moss Generator is one of those bands that I don't think if you're disappointed in what you hear, you need to get your hearing checked because
you can get this with 14 songs on it.
Yeah, it's just solid. It's great, solid rock and roll. And his we've always talked about bands doing cover tunes, and it's better when they kind of make them their own.
Absolutely.
Well, Tony makes all those songs his own and doesn't lose the integrity of the song. So that's my rock and roll pick of the week. The Moss Generator, Exiles, and Spontaneous Combustion. They're readily available, so go out and buy them. But my metal pick of the week, I've been blowing this thing up. The whole Massgrave catalog. I have it on just speed dial on my turntable. And this is probably my favorite, The Absurdity of Humanity, just because the way the world is now, this is just such a befitting title. So anything from Massgrave, they're a Canadian band, they're from British Columbia, and they're just raging. And they sort of remind me of a Tony Reed side project called Wood Rot. So if you really want to delve into the deep depths of his catalog, delve into Wood Rot and you'll get a good taste of what Massgrave is all about. But this is just killer, distorted, thrashing, hardcore, bordering on grind, but still kind of a death metal thrashy feel. So those are my picks: Moss Generator and Mass Grave. Thank you.
You're welcome. All right, but one more thing before we get into the topic, because I meant to show this too, and then I got distracted. But if you buy the CD version of this, I thought this was really cool too. It comes with a collector card. Most of this labeled stuff does, but it also comes with a doctor's
version?
appointment card.
Oh,
So Dr. L. Borden, and it says underneath of his name, "Welcome to the Kingdom of the Dead."
Oh,
So it's got a little bloody fingerprint on it. The song "Bloody Tears" is on that album. So
I'm just gonna milk that thing forever.
And this was 100% Rob Caldwell's idea. So very it's a great album, and the packaging on this thing is amazing. I mean, even the CD, the booklet's like, look how thick that booklet is, man. It's a big old fat thing, like 24 pages or something like that. So anyhow, it also has a bonus track on it that I didn't even know existed. And I've had that album for a decade. So anyhow, all right, let's get into the topic. Why don't George? It was your idea? Why don't you kind of explain the topic?
Well, I figured there's a big four of thrash and a Teutonic big four, but I never heard anyone talk. There's a big four of just regular metal, this classic metal, like pre-Metallica. So, I mean, there's a few that are obvious, and then I figured there's three that's obvious, and one that could be any one. So that's kind of why I just thought of the idea that see what everyone would pick for their four favorite or big four of the classic metal. Because it was metal back then, even though people don't believe it was metal in the 70s, but it was metal in the 70s.
I think he's going to disagree with you.
But yeah, that's fine. That's what I was going to say. Why don't you tell the three that you think should be in there before we get into the four? Because I think we have some disagreements even on the three. So let's see what you got to say on that.
All right. Well, my first one is obvious, Black Sabbath. Because you actually have nothing without Black Sabbath. Okay, I would imagine what music would be like if they didn't form. What would we be listening to today? Say, there you go.
Well,
so that's the first one.
Black Sabbath, and I'll show some Black Sabbath.
There you go.
And the second one would be Judas Priest.
Whoa!
They definitely carried the torch.
Okay.
The next level.
Guess what? That was my number 4. So that was easy.
That was easy. And I figured the number 3, they disagree, is Iron Maiden.
Yeah.
Okay,
my 3 would have been different than your 3, so that's why.
That's good. That's what it's supposed to be, like discussion. That's good.
Yeah, I have a feeling that my 3 and John's 3 are probably the same because I'm always thinking of basically the first wave that came out of the 70s, out of the UK, which would have been who? That would have been.
We'll get to that.
Black Sabbath.
Okay, but I went all the way back to the 60s. That's why I didn't include Iron Maiden because they didn't start till 75.
Well, not just that. I wouldn't choose Iron Maiden. If we were doing the big 4 of new wave of British heavy metal, Iron Maiden would have been number 1. But yeah, again, Iron Maiden, a lot of their sound comes from Judas Priest, the galloping guitars, the
dual leads.
I would think all the bands I was thinking of are pre-75. So
yeah, me too. But it doesn't have to be. So that's what the discussion is about. So
no, I'm just saying what came to my mind when you first mentioned the big 4 classic metal. 3 bands came to my mind immediately, and I'm going back and forth with number 4. But
well, what do you say, John? What would be the 3 for you before we get into the 4?
The 3 for me would be obviously Black Sabbath.
Yep. I think do we all agree Black Sabbath is one of the big 4?
Yeah. That would be insane if someone doesn't.
Okay. I didn't think anybody would agree.
Even these 3, I think it's funny how there's like debate.
Okay, yeah. Deep Purple.
Deep Purple. You know what's funny? I pulled this record on purpose because this record actually has a description on the back of it, and it says an early heavy metal band descending from the mid '60s, and it goes on to describe how they were the pivotal heavy metal band in the '70s.
Amen to that. And then yes, I think Led Zeppelin deserves to be the third cornerstone, so to speak. But and I had Priest as the 4th one. But I had some alternatives too, because I didn't know if anyone was. I didn't know if someone was going to pull Priest. George pulled it out of the fire. So I
got
Sabbath, Deep Purple, and Zeppelin.
Well, and Priest was pretty heavy in the scene. Like when you read the history of some of those bands, they were pretty well known in the scene going back to '71, when KK restarted the band from the wake of the original Judas Priest that started in '69 or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, even though they didn't put out their first record, and they were in the studio, I think, multiple times, and some stuff didn't work out before that first record came out. So they were already a known thing. So I mean, Judas Priest and Black Sabbath are definitely there for me. The third one for me is the same though. It's Deep Purple. What they did with that third album just took it to another level. And that would be it for me too.
That's yeah. I mean, I like I said, my number 4 I have some alternates, and you may want to give it some thought.
Are we doing our number 4 too? I'll tell you my number 4.
Let's make sure who else. So who? I'm sorry, I'm spacing
Brandon.
your name. Brandon, thank you.
No
Sorry.
worries. Now, all right. So
Brandon, what do you think for the 3?
So Black Sabbath, obviously, I would say Judas Priest, what they did for heavy metal, the status. I also keep in mind like the status this band has in the heavy metal like general scene. For me, number 3 has to be Iron Maiden. Like just such a massive band, such an iconic band, such an influential band, especially for the States, and then getting that whole widespread. For me, we could talk about the big 4 of like proto metal. That's when I would put like Deep Purple in there. I'd put Led Zeppelin in there because they put out the first Led Zeppelin record you can argue is metal, but Zeppelin 3 is like practically an acoustic record. They definitely have heavy elements, but to have them knock off like Iron Maiden Spot and stuff, like we can talk about again like the bands who pretty much made heavy metal and like brought the heaviness to the genre. But I think like when you look at the 70s, that's like the bands I would pull from, like that general decade. And like, it's like Iron Maiden for me, Judas Priest for me, and Sabbath for sure are like the big 3 for like just traditional heavy metal.
I don't know if you care, but how old are you?
I'm 27.
27.
So I wasn't even like alive when.
No, it's okay. No,
a lot of these bands like retired for the first time. Like.
Hey George, and how old are you, George?
54.
54. So I'm 58, and John is more than 58, and Steve is
48.
48. So we've got a pretty good variety of ages here, because I tend to argue the most with people in their 20s and 30s on Facebook about what bands from the 70s were considered metal back then, and how well they're not metal now is pretty much what I get. So
well, like and I work at a record store, and I'll argue with my boss because he keeps putting Aerosmith in metal, and I'm like, this isn't a fucking metal band.
That's gonna murder you now.
yeah.
like they're heavy, I'd call them like maybe proto glam, but like to put them in the same bin with Merciful Fate is just fucking insane, I think.
Yeah, but in 1977, 78, Aerosmith were one of the heaviest bands going.
Sure, like I agree, but it's 2025.
Right.
My other issue with Iron Maiden too is Iron Maiden's had a huge impact now. Their impact wasn't huge worldwide until their second, going into their third album. That they didn't blow up right away with that first record. In smaller communities they did, but it was really the second record and really the third record when Dickinson joined the band that they became like what they were globally. Whereas when you look at Black Sabbath, Judas Priest, and Deep Purple, the impact they made was, I mean, again, you don't have Iron Maiden without those 3 bands.
But I will say this: Maiden was more of a rock band those first 2 records until Bruce joined them. And in fact, they were covering Montrose songs So
they were
I'm not
covering
saying-
Thin Lizzy, and they were covering all kinds of stuff
yeah,
like that.
and in fact, I'm gonna just go ahead and show a couple of these things because I'm seeing it pop up in the comments. But this was an alternate for my number 4 was Blue Cheer.
Yeah, that one would be proto metal for me.
That's heavy. And a Mountain. I couldn't find my Mountain record because I think they were playing heavy riffs. I mean, it was heavy metal, and then I saw somebody pop off with this Cream. Despite the fact that there you go, George.
Like
Yeah, I
Grand
love the
Funk
heavy
is
blues.
another one too.
I mean, those are, and then I'm just gonna go ahead and be controversial and get them all out of the way. How about that guy? There any elements of metal in Jimi Hendrix?
For
At least
sure.
the first,
Oh,
the
absolutely.
first record. So I mean,
Yeah.
without these bands, I don't think anybody, there's a good chance that some of the other bands that we've already mentioned after the fact aren't doing something quite as heavy and quite as raucous. And yes, Scott, I just did an episode on the Alter Ego on 128 dB Rock about what my parents thought was heavy metal, and it included Purple and Kiss. In fact, I played Kiss Parasite just for Brandon, and Coliseum and UFO, and they thought all that stuff was heavy metal. Even Aerosmith. I mean, Rocks. That is a heavy record. I mean, it really is. It's fast. It's speedy. It's got good riffing, but it's.
I've got
they were
I've got
parents.
tons of magazines, literally tons of magazines that I could pull out. That like 1978 magazine calling Aerosmith the heavy metal band of the year. Grooves magazine
Well,
called them the.
Jethro Tull beat out Metallica for a metal.
Yeah,
cover.
well, that's
that was
That's how much credibility that has.
Yeah, but that's a bunch of morons that not people that are actually into the music.
I had
Yeah, that
Circus
was actually
magazine.
music
I had
bands.
Circus
That was,
magazine, Scott. They had Queen, they had Aerosmith, they had Nugent, they had all those bands, and that was heavy metal back then. But was it?
Well, it's like also if we follow that logic, then like practically like Steppenwolf is the first ever metal band. Like
Heavy
that's
Metal
where
Thunder.
the genre comes from, like
Definitely,
the name.
all that heavy blues stuff. I mean, I could list dozens of bands from '68 to '72, that were doing the heavy blues thing. That metal. I mean, that's what Earth was doing before they became Black Sabbath. And took it up to the next.
Well, without Elvis Presley, the blues would have never become acceptable in the white culture. Let's just face it. And when Presley hit the scene, they thought he was black, and then they found out he went to an all-white high school, and they thought, well, wait, this guy's white, and all of a sudden his meteoric rise started. But he was based in the blues, and then he made the blues popular. That's why I have an Elvis Presley patch on my battle jacket, because I think that he sprung that trap open to people to be more accepting of the blues, because Sabbath is straight up a blues band.
Even go back to the Beatles and listen to Helter Skelter. The original cut to Help. That's one of the heaviest songs from the '60s, man. That thing was really good and dark as fuck too.
Like if we're talking about the top 4 bands that helped create the genre, 100%: Deep Purple, Zeppelin, Sabbath, and then I think the 4th spot you can argue many bands.
But I mean, that's what I think of as classic metal, is the stuff from the '70s. The stuff from the '80s is more. I don't, in the '80s you got you got the new wave of British heavy metal. You got the U.S. power metal, thrash
metal.
Even
Even death metal began in the 80s.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
where does Motorhead fit in all this? Because I've seen comments about Motorhead.
Motorhead for me is almost proto thrash. I thought I would love to put Motorhead in there, but
according to Lemmy, they played rock and roll.
yeah.
We play rock and roll. Well, even Ozzy and Tony Iommi claimed that Sabbath weren't a heavy metal band for years and years and years, so they finally adopted it.
Well, so did Robert
way
Plant, but
late.
whatever.
Yeah. So I mean, I get it. Well, and the thing was, if you actually look back and do some history on the term heavy metal, it was actually a negative term in the 70s when they first started using it. These bands are just a bunch of noise heavy metal. That was what it was. And then it was bands like Judas Priest that actually ran with that term, despite it being negative, and like, yep, that's what we're doing.
What year did heavy metal music come out?
I
Was that
Well,
after the term was already being used?
that lyric, Heavy Metal Thunder, was in a Steppenwolf song. On
67, 68 was when
Yeah.
but that was and that was referring to the the sound of a motorcycle, which is where the term came from. It's just a bunch of noise that these guys are playing.
And Steppenwolf were practically like just such a biker band,
Yeah,
So I guess it makes
no doubt
sense
about
you
it.
put 2 and 2. But
Yeah.
for me, Motorhead 100% is in
Yeah.
my 4. 100%. Like they were like kind of almost like the Sabbath for speed metal and thrash, in my opinion. Lars even says like Motorhead was the band for him, and his whole goal with Metallica was to bring Motorhead to the States. And then that became a whole fucking thing. So I think Motorhead extremely influential, amazing music, and it's like, how has it held up over time? Some of the most iconic in the like genre in its entirety. So that's why it's in there for sure for me.
Kevin
That's
checking
number-
in. What's
number
up, Kevin?
4, Motorhead.
If anybody's
can't-
wondering where
I
Kevin
can't
is, why he's
argue
not
with
here, he had to
Motorhead.
work today.
I
Here's an
can't argue
interesting
with
comment.
Motorhead. In fact, the Overkill record probably started the whole double bass thing.
Read this comment and and let me know what you think, John.
I agree.
Yeah, Robert Johnson should be in the 4.
Yeah.
Might as well.
Yeah, ask Jimmy Page about that.
Who was the first band to do Beethoven's Fifth as metal?
I don't know, but
Tenacious
Walter
D.
Murphy did it as
I know Tourniquet did it, but I'm sure somebody else did.
Walter Murphy
Didn't,
did it as a disco thing.
Sabotage.
Didn't Seareth Uncle do something with it?
They may have.
Yeah,
And I know Testament's done something with it.
I'm gonna look it up because it's gonna make me crazy.
Okay, so Mr. Pickle mentioned the Who.
Yeah,
Well, the Who,
I
I
mean,
mean, their early stuff was almost garage rock. I mean, it basically was early garage rock.
Have you seen the footage though
Punk
of Keith
came out of
Moon
that.
playing? I mean, that's as metal as it gets right
Oh
there.
yeah. A lot
If
of
we were having this conversation about punk, like
Yeah.
I would totally say.
okay, I was wrong. So Seareth Uncle did Toccata in D minor,
okay.
which is also a pretty metal classical song.
Sure.
The Great Cat. No, I don't know.
Man, she is a wild one for sure. But anyway,
Yeah.
So I'm going
I
to
don't
give
know
my
how-
number 4. My number 4 is Uriah Heep. Those first 2 Uriah Heep records are so heavy. The first one is so good and super underrated. I just saw them last year, and it's one of the best hard rock shows I've been to in a long. I mean, they played with Saxon, who I love, and man, Saxon just sounded so weak after Uriah Heep left the stage. It was just fantastic. And I like the first probably 5 Uriah records, but those first 2 are just about as good as it gets.
Stealing is a top 20 rock anthem of all time, I think.
Yeah, I wouldn't disagree. So let's see if we can. So we pretty much have everybody's agreed on Black Sabbath. Everybody's agreed on Judas Priest, right?
3 of us agree on Deep Purple.
So we basically got 2 to 3. No,
So
not
we
4.
win.
So we'll say we all agree on Sabbath and we all agree on Priest. So now we need to come up with a third that we can all agree on. Yeah, that's. What do you think?
Well, I got my number 4, but I was thinking of doing this. Like you guys are named like Zeppelin, I thought of, but they never consider themselves metal. And like you said, they have Zeppelin 3 is an acoustic album. But I was going by like the first 2 albums. And Motorhead's a great choice, but I went with Deep Purple. So when In Rock came out, they became to me, a metal band, I guess, at that time. That's definitely heavy stuff. This is one of the heaviest albums of the 70s, in my opinion, but at least at that time. Yeah. So
I see. Deep Purple is my. I didn't even think anybody would argue with Deep Purple. To be honest with you, I thought everybody would argue with Led Zeppelin, but not Deep
And
Purple.
according to Greg the Egg, Led Zeppelin is the poor man's Deep Purple. So
Yes, that is what he says.
he's been saying that for at least the decade that I've known him. There he goes, right there. Blackmore rules.
Yep.
Led
Keep
Zeppelin
the
is the
Purple,
poor man's
Priest, Maiden, and Sabbath. I mean, I can't argue with that really. The Maiden thing, y'all say what you want. They started too late for me. I'm talking about foundation bands. So, but I can't argue that they're metal. I mean, I'm not going to. I'm not here to fight about it.
No, I love.
Yeah, I can't argue with that. You know,
Like I said, if we
they're
were
totally a
if we
foundation.
were doing new wave of British heavy metal, they would be my number one.
I don't know what year CD
Oh.
started coming out. It was early '80s, right? When CD started becoming
Yeah,
a
81,
thing.
82.
Because this is like one of the oldest CDs in my collection. I've had this thing forever, and it's his Deep Purple's Machine Head, and it's like the very first CD pressing when everything was just black ink on a silver disc and all that kind of crap. And
It was the fifth record I ever bought in my life.
The booklet was just a cheap 3-panel thing, but even on here back when this thing came out, it calls Deep Purple one of the defining bands of the heavy metal movement of the 70s.
Oh, somebody just threw in AC/DC, Blackmore Rules.
I've actually, several people have actually said AC/DC in the comments.
He just changed. He must. Well, he's Canadian, so I have to give him some slack for changing his mind.
No one mentioned Alice Cooper. I know they preferred. He has an interview with him saying that he was called heavy metal at the time, which they're really more shock rock than
he was
metal.
more heavy metal for the look than the actual sound. I mean,
Yeah.
he was straight up glam. But
well, that first record,
Nightmare with Welcome to My Nightmare, that was a pretty heavy metal album.
Even that first album, you know, there's like a lot of proto metal elements to it and like heaviness. You know, it's like rock for today, for sure, but very heavy.
I saw him on $1 Billion Babies tour, and the presentation was very, very heavy metal.
And he was the one he was one of the first one. Him and Arthur Brown kind of created what would become the stage show for heavy metal. You know,
yeah.
And Screamin' Jay Hawkins a little bit. You know,
Mr. Pickle brings up another good one. What about Thin Lizzy?
True.
The purveyors of the dual guitar sound. I mean, there was other bands that had the dual guitar sound, but those guys really brought the metal edge to that sound, which Priest and Maiden both adopted, and both have given props to Thin Lizzy because of that. But dual guitar sound alone doesn't mean heavy metal.
I was gonna say I've never thought Thin Lizzy was heavy metal. A hard rock, maybe you could argue that, but heavy metal, probably. I mean, not in my opinion, but that's my opinion.
And I think a lot of those bands have heavy metal elements in some of their songs, but their whole catalog doesn't really reflect metal. So maybe there are certain eras in the albums or certain songs that sound like Budgie. They had some heavy songs, but they also had some very acoustic songs. So I mean, I wouldn't count them, but it's still in the equation.
Budgie's great. Like they for sure could be like in this discussion, but like you're saying, exactly, like a lot of variety in their music, but super heavy.
The problem with Budgie was nobody outside of England knew who they were until Metallica covered them, you know?
Yeah,
literally.
And I love Budgie, but again, I didn't really know them until well into the 80s and the 90s. So I wish I would have known them back then. I don't have any problem with this suggestion from Damien Hair Metal, but I know everybody else will.
Well, I think it's like a Riot problem where it's like, oh, it's a fucking bird. It's probably some like classical music or something, you know?
You know, with Budgie, I think it was the singer's vocals that, you know, I remember hearing them for the first time in the 90s, and his vocals annoyed the shit out of me. He's got a weird sound to his voice. Once you get used to it, you love it, you know. But
Geddy Lee, I mean, there's a lot of similarities there.
Yeah.
And that first Rush album, that's pretty heavy. I just listened to it this week because
so was Caress of Steel.
Yeah, we went to
before they got the replacement drummer.
Yeah, we went to karaoke on Friday, and someone played Working Man. They sang Working Man or karaoke to Working Man, and I thought, man, that's pretty heavy.
Well, how do you guys feel about King Crimson? You know, there's a lot of prog too. That's like 21st century schizoid, man. Like, I'd say that's pretty heavy.
Yeah. That's one of the coolest songs that they ever did. However, the rest of that album sucks.
Yeah, you don't like 10 minutes of just bells and whistles.
Oh my god! It's got the greatest opening track, one of the greatest opening tracks of music history. There's so many cool versions of that song too, and then the rest of the album just completely puts me to sleep.
The title track's pretty good, but it's like, again, it's like a 13-minute.
You got to be into
even
prog.
Rainbow.
Prog
I love
prog rock
Rainbow.
is something you have to really digest it and listen to it over and over again to really understand it.
Kevin Colhase, you ding ding, you get the prize. I was going to bring up Iron Butterfly.
Yeah. Again, a super metal song, but when you actually listen to all their records, it was a lot more bluesy than metal.
Yeah.
I just pulled this one out. What about First Nazareth?
Oh
That's
man,
pretty heavy
that's
blues.
really good, and that's really heavy. That's actually, I think, heavier than their next 3 records.
Well, this is on a double one. This is
There it
like
is.
totally different than their first album. That was pretty.
They
Weird.
got weird really fast.
Yes.
Nazareth were weird because they put out a heavy album like Razamanaz, and then the very next album would be like acoustic mellow, and then they put out another heavy album. I mean,
Yeah.
Like
this
Hair of
one
the
here
Dog
was-
had the most heavy metal cover ever, and yet it really wasn't.
I don't know, man. And the Hair of the
Well, other
the
than
song,
Love Hurts, which was the biggest hit they ever had, the rest of that record's pretty heavy.
yeah.
Yeah.
I mean that's Son of a Bitch is on there, if I'm not mistaken. I mean that's the name. That's what Hair of the Dog means.
Yeah.
Right.
Someone brought up Def Leppard. Nah.
Which
were-
Finder
If we're
General?
talking British New Wave, you can argue, but
Yeah, I mean, and they abandoned it way too quickly. Anyhow, I mean, they released two albums and went on a downhill slide after that.
Hey, what's up, Eddie? Yeah,
How
that's
about
a good
Witchfinder
one.
General?
Yeah, Witchfinder. Well, I wouldn't put it on this list, but man, for that early kind of doom heavy metal, man, that Witchfinder, those first 2 Witchfinder Generals are amazing.
Had they not had a bunch of mishaps, Pentagram could have been on that list too. But they didn't really get anything until the '80s due to the, I don't know, whatever happened with them and the record
according
label.
to Bobby Liebling, they're not a heavy metal band and they're not a doom band. They're
heavy
just
hard
Yeah.
rock.
heavy
And neither
hard rock.
neither is Black Sabbath, right? So yeah,
Yeah, that's why it gets tricky when we just define it by what
Well,
journalists
you can't
are
go by what the
saying,
band
what
thinks, 'cause
bands are saying.
Def Leppard
Yeah.
still says they were never new wave of British heavy metal, which is one of the most ridiculous things you can say.
yeah, they didn't have a problem with it in the early '80s when they were gracing the cover of every single metal magazine out there.
Yeah.
Anyhow, sorry. So we still only have 2. We have Judas Priest. We have Black Sabbath. I guess we can squeeze in Deep Purple just
Deep
because enough
Purple?
of us agreed. So I guess we need to come up with a 4th. We've talked about a lot of them, but
So let's narrow it down to 4.
I would
what do
go
you
with
guys think? What do you guys think about
I-
What do you guys think about Rainbow?
No, I would go with Motorhead.
I'd go Motorhead as
for the
well.
4th.
I go Motorhead too.
Here's a I love Rainbow. Rainbow Rising, I think, is one of the greatest records of all time.
Right. It is a prototype to what became power metal.
They did so much ballads, though, and 13, 14-minute ballads on every one of their live records. And what's the song that Dio always did? Was it? I always forget the name of it. It's always like one whole side of the double live. But yeah.
Talking about the
I don't
blues
mind
track
going-
they always did. The blues track.
Yeah, whatever it is. It's that quiet one.
I don't mind going with Motorhead. I can't argue. I'm not going to argue with Lemmy. I think Motorhead's too important. I mean, I got a tattoo. I got a Motorhead tattoo, big as Dallas, on the back of my leg. So, I mean, they obviously mean something. And I can't.
Mistreated. Took me a second. That's the
And
song
their
you're talking about.
first album that didn't get released until '79, On Parole. Man, I mean, that was had that been released in '76 when they recorded it, people would talk about them completely different than the way they do with it coming out in '79. You know,
we're getting a lot of Angel Witch, and that's another one I would put in the.
oh,
I mean,
man.
if we did a big 4 of new wave of British heavy metal, I'd put that
Speaking
one
of
in that
Angel
camp.
Witch, you can
Yeah.
find this version of the Angel Witch record. So this came out in '86. This is Angel Witch, the debut album, but it's also got the Loser EP on here, the 3 songs from that. This with Loser on it is the number 2 new wave of British heavy metal album of all time. Loser is it just blows me away that it didn't make this album initially, but man, so good. And you can find this for like $20. It's not an expensive record.
Montrose?
We got a suggestion from Montrose from Kevin. Yeah.
I think the first Montrose is a 12-star record. Space Station number 5, right?
Something like that.
Or number 9 or number 5 or
Yeah, I think it's number 5. I think it's one of the great songs of the 70s. It's the best that what's his name ever sounded. Help me out.
Sammy Hagar.
Sammy Hagar
Yep.
ever sounded. I like the second record too, but that first record's a 12-star. But yeah,
I love
again,
the way we come on the metal.
It's all the British blues.
I love the way we come on the metal round table and completely forget every lead singer that ever happened.
Oh,
Who's
I
that guy
do it all
from
the time. You get on
Priest
camera and you get stupid. It's just
That
the way
guy
it
for
is.
Judas Priest. Who is that? Yeah. Short hair, beard, rides a motorcycle. No,
Al
Mr.
Atkins.
Owens.
yeah, Ripper Owens. I don't know those first two Montrose. I mean, Paper Money is still good too. They still had it, and then I think when Hagar left, I don't know. I don't know that I could include them, but I'm still in the Motorhead camp. Although I still think
Tell you what, Damien, that first Elf album cover is one of the most metal album covers of the '70s. But that they were again, it was that heavy British blues.
Kiss.
Eh.
I'm talking about the cornerstone of your heavy metal palace.
They were definitely one of the most influential bands coming out of the 70s. They definitely influenced the look, the sound, and the stage show.
The stage show for sure. And they took what Alice Cooper did with a little bit of makeup and took it to the next level. And then the entire 80s was built with bands trying to replicate that with the different variations of makeup. So, yeah, I mean, definitely. And actually their first record, other than, if you have the original version of the first record, there's not a bad track on there. So, and that's still some of the best stuff they ever wrote was the songs from the first record.
Well, on the second one too, like I'm Going Blind and stuff, heavy and doomy.
The whole album was doomy. The production of that album made it sound heavy and doomy.
It's just it's just very, very raw recording with very biting guitar sound, which is I agree. But
you just described heavy metal, sir.
Yeah.
Well, also, of course, you have like I'm not sure how you guys feel about like Sir Lord Baltimore, Dust. You know,
we all love those bands.
Yeah.
That first Sir Lord Baltimore is amazing. Both the Dust albums are amazing.
But see,
the guy from Dust went on to produce the Kiss records, wasn't it? One of the guys from Dust.
Yes.
Yeah, I thought so.
She was.
But you're talking about proto metal now,
right? But that I feel like even like Deep Purple, you can argue is proto metal.
Yeah, and a lot of people will argue with us until they're blue in the face that, Deep Purple are not a heavy metal band. Maybe even the band would do it. I don't know, but
Zeppelin said we're not metal. Tony Iommi said Sabbath isn't metal. They all said they're not metal. It's because
somebody said though when they were calling them metal in 72, 73, it wasn't. They were insulting them. It wasn't.
Yeah, well, that's the reason why they didn't like the monikers because
that's what I'm saying. That's why they didn't want to be called that.
Yeah.
Right. And not only that, they didn't want to be trapped into they couldn't do a blues song. They couldn't do an acoustic song. Yeah, that's why it was like you had to do a heavy song if you're a heavy metal band.
Yeah,
here, I found this.
Tell
check
that
this out.
Incantation that you can't do anything outside your genre.
Well, also,
heavy metal.
Yeah.
Heavy metal is stacks of speakers and high voltage amps, deep, thunderous, surging sounds from the bass, screaming lead guitars emitting doomsday warnings, pumped up percussions, instruments and minds being demolished on stage. There is no subtlety in heavy metal. It's the hardest of hard rock with electric shock treatments and a vibrating air churning right before your eyes. That's a definition from 1978 out of.
You sound like my dad.
I just read a definition out of a magazine from '78. And that article is about Aerosmith.
Shit. I'm changing my mind.
What's interesting about the early metal too, and the proto metal, is it wasn't the guitar or the vocals that made it sound metal. It was the bass. They were cranking the bass to levels where the bass was almost distorting, and that's where a lot of that heavy sound came from. And everybody was overdriving the guitar. I mean, people forget they didn't have distortion yet back then. They were just overdriving the guitars, and they cranked up the bass to give it a heavier sound. And that's kind of what the early Black Sabbath stuff is. It's just really good overdrive and that the crazy bass lines that were almost distorted. He was basically overdriving the bass too to get that heavy sound.
See, I always thought the heaviness of Sabbath was in Tony Iommi's guitar tone, and I guess that they were down tuned, right?
He had to be down tuned because he wouldn't be able to actually push the frets down.
Yeah, because the first two albums I think were just straight up E tuning.
Yeah, the first two records he didn't down tune. He didn't do it till like the third record.
But they still had these crappy equipment that gave him this really raw, heavy sound. Whereas Led Zeppelin's sound heaviness definitely came not from the guitars, but from the bass and drums. Because John Bonham was a freaking
go back though and go back and listen to those and really listen to Bill Ward. I mean, he was playing crazy bass lines. He was distorting the bass. It's really good.
Yeah, I remember the acid rock term back in the day too.
And it's funny what they were doing with amps. I was, they would have these cheap amps that they bought for nothing that had problems with them, and they would keep using them, and they wouldn't get them fixed because they were afraid it was going to mess with their sound. There's a lot of stories from guys like that they would buy whatever the Tweed was, and they bought it for cheap, and one of the channels was fucked up, but it gave it this really cool sound. Or a lot of the what's his name? What's the Indian guy from the rock and roll guy or the guitar?
Ravi Shankar?
No, not that Indian. American Indian.
Rick Medlock?
No,
Rick Medlock from the Blackfoot?
No, from the late 50s, early 60s.
The Django, what's his name?
Played guitar.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
I don't know.
He's not a lead singer. We can't forget his name.
He was a singer later on. He couldn't.
Oh, well, that's why we're forgetting.
That explains it.
Anyway,
I'm going to sound like a real snob, but I'm telling you right now, the way people listen to music these days as compared to how we listened to it back then, I mean, I can distinctly remember in my young teens, mid-teens, riding with my backpack on my Stingray over to my friend's house, whose father had just gotten back from Okinawa because he was military, and he had this massive Pioneer or Sansui system, and that's where we would listen to our music. We would listen to it on giant speakers, very loud, and on vinyl. And nowadays, I see people trying to listen to music and trying to get into music in their phones. And to me, that drives me insane. And people ask me, why do you have so many systems in your house? Well, because people start listening on their phones and they just give me their garbage, their stuff they think is garbage. So I inherit a system. But every system in here is tuned to a different kind of music. And I'm telling you, when you listen to metal, or if you listen to the four bands that even let's say that 6 bands that we've mentioned, including Motorhead, if you're not listening to it loud, you're just not listening to it right. So you listen to Zeppelin or listen to Deep Purple on a really nice, big, loud system, and it'll change your perception of what kind of music it is.
Yeah, like a lot of the people in my generation are just fucked, because like 90% of my friends, I'll go over their place to listen to music, and they have like this $20 little Bluetooth speaker. And it's like, what do you want to listen to? I'm like, nothing that isn't like
nothing on that.
I have a $600 pair of headphones right here that sound great. They don't sound near as good as my stereo system, though, cranked up, So, no, what I was saying about Link Ray, though, because he's one of the guys that gave us the overdrive, he had this old beat up amp that somebody accidentally popped a hole in the speaker, and it created this weird vibration that added to the overdrive, and he refused to get rid of that because he couldn't recreate that sound at that era. Years later, once they had the technology down to do it, to create effects and stuff, he could, but early on he was using that beat up speaker with the tear in the subwoofer, or the tear in the distortion that he wanted.
Right on. Well, let's end with each of us picking our own 4, and we'll just go around the queue. I'll start. I mean, I'm going to keep it pretty much the same. I'm going to go Deep Purple, Led Zeppelin, Judas Priest, and Black Sabbath. And my honorable mention would be the Scorpions, because Uli Roth was huge influence on a lot of people.
I went back and forth with the Scorpions and ended up going with. So initially, the first three that came to mind for me were Black Sabbath, Judas Priest, and Uriah Heep. I think those are the most important early UK bands for heavy metal. Don't get me wrong about Led Zeppelin. And I went back and forth between the Scorpions and Deep Purple, and ended up landing on Deep Purple. So,
right on, John.
I think we all agree on Black Sabbath,
Mm-hmm.
and then it gets muddled after that. But I'm going to stick with Deep Purple, Zeppelin, and Priest, and then an honorable mention to Motorhead.
Right on, Brandon.
Yeah, so I pretty much agree with everyone's picks, but for me, it's like, of course, Sabbath, Judas Priest. I'm going to say Iron Maiden because of how influential they are and just amazing songwriting from them, and just one of the greats. And Motorhead for practically, carrying the torch for speed metal.
Yep. Motorhead were one of those bands that kind of crossed over too. They were one of the few bands that crossed over from the metalheads to the punks, especially in the 80s when it was like a big clash between the two. And Motorhead was one that pulled all that together.
Great
Agreed.
stuff.
Uh-oh, Steve's quiet. Did you get muted,
Sorry.
Steve?
So metal artists, and especially in the 80s, were very tribal. The thrash guys didn't like the glam. The glam didn't like Motorhead was the one band that if you were into thrash, death metal, it didn't matter. Everybody liked Motorhead. So,
yep. Last word to you. This was your topic, George. So
I'm still going with what I said, Sabbath, Priest, Purple, and Maiden. But and a nod to Motorhead. They could have substituted Maiden, I guess. Because they did start the whole. I guess it's good because they started thrash metal in their way. Definitely were faster and heavier than anyone else at the time.
Damien Hair Metal said Lynyrd Skynyrd. I don't know if you're joking or not. I thought it was funny. But
They certainly had the Iron Maiden guitar set up before Iron Maiden, that's for sure.
I have a magazine with an article and they're interviewing Dave Flubeck from Molly Hatchet, and they were asking him, "What is Molly Hatchet? Are you a Southern rock band?" And he comes back and he says, "Molly Hatchet is a mixture of Southern rock, Lynyrd Skynyrd style Southern rock, and heavy metal."
They were also doing triple and quadruple guitars on stage.
Yeah, they were.
Okay, I have one more question to ask as we depart our rabid listening audience here, but I'm surprised nobody even glanced at Van Halen.
I know one reason they kind of resurrected metal, helped resurrect metal in the late 70s and into the early 80s, that's for sure. Because metal was, even Black Sabbath were kind of petering off and dying in popularity. Kiss was the same way. They couldn't fill a stadium anymore. A lot of those bands were dying. And the Aerosmith, too, they were, all deep in drugs and falling apart and doing silly stuff like the Sgt. Pepper's soundtrack, that kind of thing. And
people get mad at me when I say this, though. When you listen to Black Sabbath, those Black Sabbath records, they hold up today just like they did back then. Every band that we mentioned, those early records all still hold up just as good today. I love Van Halen, but after that first record, the second, third record, the fifth, they sound very 80s compared to these other bands. Don't get me wrong, I love the first Van Halen record is one of my all-time favorites. The second one's pretty good too, but the second and third, they sound very 80s. They just don't sound as good to me today as they did back then.
If I were a professor of metal and I was giving my class an assignment, I would challenge you to listen to the first two Van Halens, and then the other thing is start listening to heavy metal or even hard rock on a loud sound system. And if you could do the Van Halen thing on a loud, like I've been working over at Henry's Jam Space, Pentagram, Moth Generator, Blood of the Henrys played in them. And I tuned up his stereo over there because he bought an old rack Pioneer system from me that wasn't plugged in, but I plugged it in, and the first thing I played on it was Van Halen 2. And I'm telling you, that is a heavy, heavy record, but it was being played loudly and with a lot of power behind it. And So I don't know. I think that's Scott. I think that's the part that when you were reading that description about Aerosmith, that's the part that gets lost in translation is we're listening to music like this instead of with our hair blowing back. And when we go see a concert, that's why we love the live experience, because it's large and loud and it
In
just
your
is
face.
different. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
just different. But anyway,
Cool. Well,
that's all.
we didn't come to a conclusion, a final conclusion between all of us, but I think we picked a lot of great bands. So
Sure.
awesome. So anyhow, I appreciate our guests coming on. George for coming up with the topic. Brandon, you're always welcome. Appreciate you having on. I like because you have I know it's weird to say you're young, but you are younger than us, and so we get a different perspective from you, which I really dig. So, but
I get
also
reminded every time I put my opinion on YouTube, but yeah.
Welcome
It's
to
like,
that
you don't know
world.
shit, you weren't there in 78 in the pit, it's whatever. But it's fun. I like it. It changes my mind on a lot of things too, because I'm still like taking in a lot of this information. It's so hard to be into metal nowadays because there's so much fucking music to listen to. It's not like you got to like kind of witness it start and like take it in as it kept going. Now it's like, where do you even begin? But yeah, it's a lot of fun talking about this stuff.
And not just that, people that, especially if you're younger, you don't realize how fast it changed. Every year there was a new style of metal coming out in the 80s, and creating different branches. It was, the 80s was a cool time to be into metal.
Like, I know this band never got brought up, but Metallica, a lot of people my age will say the Black Album like changed their life, and that was their like intro to it. And it's still metal. It's still a metal record. It's like, unfortunately did some damage to the genre, I believe. But like the commercial element, like the radio play that album got, like metal was like, massive when that record dropped. So
yeah, that was a huge album. That thing sold what, 10 million copies or something crazy like that.
It's the best-selling metal album of all time, and it still sells.
But it didn't have the savagery of the first three, that's for sure.
Not even close.
Yeah.
What was the big song? What was the big hit on that album? The big song was
Enter Sandman.
Right. That's it. I don't care what anybody says. That's a heavy riff.
Yeah, My Friend of Misery is a great track off that, of Wolf and Man. Like there's some good shit on that, but I'm gonna listen to Ride or Kill 'Em All any day, like before that.
I love Kill 'Em All because it's just so raw and it's got this youthful energy that, after once you hit a certain age, I mean, come on, you guys are in your 50s and 60s now. You're not going to put out Kill 'Em All. When you were that's such a teenage record, and it had such a teenage angst, one of the things I loved about it. Same thing with, I know not everybody's a fan of them, but the first Vengeance Rising Human Sacrifice album, the same thing. It's just so raw and ridiculously heavy for its time. But
that Sodom album is one of the rawest things I've ever heard, and it's one of my all-time favorites.
Well, right on. Well, hey, Brandon, where can people find you if they're looking for you?
Yeah, so I host this podcast called Disturbing the Priest. Check it out. It's on YouTube, Spotify, everywhere. I'm also a comedian. I do stand-up. You can follow me on Instagram at Brandon Baddick, Battick. Thank you.
Right on. And George, where can everybody find you at?
George G's Room of Rock, and also on GTR Rock Run with Ron Haggerty and Tim.
And you just released the video like in the last few days, correct?
For GTR Rock Run, or
on your channel.
Yeah, I did I did a challenge, 10 metal albums to scream metal.
Yeah, because I saw it come up. I haven't watched it yet, but it came up my feed, so that's why I thought about it. But I'll check it out. Steve, where can we find you at?
Harmless Rebel on YouTube. Harmless_Rebel on Instagram if you want to see all my concert videos. It's pretty much it.
John.
On Instagram at Carcass John Art or on 128 DB Rock. Download the free app and you have access to a lot of cool content, including my 2 shows, The Crypt, which is heavy, even heavier than Uriah Heep, and then the Alter Ego, where I just delve into all sorts of, because I like to listen to other stuff besides just the heavy stuff. So check it out, 128 DB Rock.
Matter of fact, we just had a we just had this group talk about doing a show in the near future about favorite albums that have nothing to do with hard rock or heavy metal. So I think that'll be a fun one to do.
Osric Tentacles.
So yeah, of course. All right, anyhow, you can find me on Instagram at No Life to Metal, or you can find me on YouTube and Scott Waters and No Life to Metal. You can find me on Facebook. I'm everywhere. Just look under No Life to Metal, all one word. You'll find me somewhere. So that's it. So you guys know how we end it. And definitely appreciate everybody coming. I appreciate our guests. Appreciate y'all watching. We had a lot of people commenting. I really tried hard to keep up with all the comments, and I think I kept up with them for the most part. Mr. Pickle is laughing. He thinks that's funny. Here's a comment I missed, but I don't know what that applies to. So
that was in
Sandy Kerr from the Trick or Treat movie.
the Trick or Treat movie. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Okay.
The preacher, and was it Gene Simmons was the something
DJ.
Yeah,
He was the DJ. Yeah, I
I
remember that. I
movie
have a
right
soundtrack. With,
Brandon is shaking his head. He's like,
I haven't seen that movie.
No.
I haven't seen that movie in decades, but I
I
have
had
the
great
soundtrack.
metal soundtracks. There you go.
He still hasn't gotten over Phantom in the Park.
Oh,
Still swimming in that one.
I remember when
I gotta watch that.
when they used to play that on regular TV once a year.
Phantom of the Park, man. If you get a chance to watch it, see if you can. They put it out again. Kiss put it out again as part of one of those 3 DVD packages, and they put out the European pressing, which is really cool because it had songs from the solo albums mixed in with it.
With Kisstory, it's one of the Kisstory packages.
Yeah, it's one of the Kisstory
Yeah.
ones, and and it had other.
It's actually it's actually a better edit of the film than the other one, which isn't saying much.
Yeah.
It's still terrible, but it's better. It's less terrible. How about that?
It's comical. It's campy, but I kind of like it. But I also like Sgt. Pepper's the
Oh, that
Peter
was a
Frampton.
horrible movie. You just like it because Aerosmith's in it.
No, I don't know. It's one of those things you grow up with it, and I just like it. I literally listened to the entire album today. So
If it's better than Give My Regards to Broad Street, I'll check it out.
I definitely wouldn't recommend the Sgt. Pepper's movie. It's pretty. I mean, it's way corny, but
Aren't the Bee
Peter
Gees
Frampton.
in it?
It's mostly the
Yes.
Bee Gees and Peter Frampton. They
Okay,
are the
that's what I
Sgt.
thought.
Pepper's band,
That's what I
but
thought.
they're not playing. It's not disco. They're playing Beatles tracks, and it's all rock.
Yeah.
But Alice Cooper's in it, and Steve Martin's in it, and of course Aerosmith. And Aerosmith gets into a fight and beats up Peter Frampton. So that movie actually destroyed the record company that put that album out. Destroyed it. They were a huge company, and then it just destroyed them. But in any case, which is weird because Come Together was actually a huge hit, and it's still played on the radio these days.
Yep.
But anyhow, all right, enough of that. We can talk forever. All right, you guys know how we end the show. It's always the same. Ready? Metal.
Will.
Prevail. And this is where I leave you all hanging, and you can make silly faces and all that kind of fun stuff. So.